commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines at 7 o'clock. Russian state media says Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is in Moscow with his family, with Kremlin sources saying they've been granted asylum there. It comes as people are emptying the streets as rebel forces impose a curfew in Damascus after taking control of the capital, marking a dramatic fall in Assad's regime and forcing him to flee. US President Joe Biden has called it a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future. Here in the UK, around 100 Syrians have arrived at Piccadilly Circus in London to celebrate the fall of the Assad regime. Meanwhile, the Foreign Office has been evacuating British nationals ahead of the offensive, though the exact numbers remain unclear. And the Prime Minister says the UK welcomes the fall of Assad's barbaric regime in Syria.
I welcome the fact that Assad has gone. The Syrian people had to put up with his brutal regime for far, far too long. We're talking to regional allies. It's very important now that there's a political settlement, a political way forward. And it's very, very important that we emphasise that civilians and minorities must be protected in this process. But very, very pleased that Assad has fallen.
Now, strong winds are hammering the UK just days after Storm Dara left 2 men dead and thousands without power. A yellow weather warning is in place with gusts of up to 70 miles an hour, threatening more blackouts and travel chaos. Flooding fears are rising too, with over 200 alerts issued across England, Wales and Scotland. 200,000 homes are still without electricity after the storm brought 93-mile-an-hour winds on Saturday. In other news, the leader of Edinburgh City Council has been suspended by the Labour Party after claims he sent inappropriate sexual messages to Ukrainian refugees, including through a dating app. Police are now investigating a report of Cammy Day's behaviour made through the council's whistleblowing service. Opposition leaders, including from the SNP, are calling for his immediate resignation, describing the allegations as beyond shocking. The leader of Scottish Labour, Anna Sarwar, says the claims are deeply distressing and insists the party acted swiftly when alerted on Saturday. Mr Day, who denies any contact from police, has not commented on the allegations. Now, thousands gathered for a march against anti-Semitism that took place in London today. The route passed through Westminster and Whitehall, ending with a rally at Parliament Square. It follows reported quadrupling of anti-Semitic hate crimes over the past year, making Jewish people the UK's most targeted minority faith group. The rise is linked to the Hamas attacks on Israel in October and the subsequent strikes on Gaza. And the Prince of Wales has been helping serve Christmas lunch at a homeless shelter run by a charity that he was introduced to by his late mother. William wore one of the Passage charity's aprons as he joined the long line of volunteers serving food while chatting with attendees on Thursday. He first visited the London-based homelessness charity more than 30 years ago with his late mother, Diana, the Princess of Wales. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Surprise revelations from the US Congress, a Newcastle United fan wages war on rainbow armbands, and Cinderella gets a trigger warning. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. And coming up on the show tonight, a student allegedly suspended from her university radio station in Leeds for expressing gender-critical views. Is campus free speech under serious threat? A mental health professional is launching a new service, pledging to erase ideologies from therapy. Is it time to rethink how we treat mental health? And the victim of a German terror attack is convicted of anti-Islam hate speech. So, is two-tier policing becoming an international problem? And of course, I have a wonderful comedian panel here tonight who'll be answering questions, as usual, from this lovely live studio audience. My guests tonight are Lewis Schaefer and Cressida Wetton. How are you both? Great start to the show, Lewis. The thing is, Lewis, I was in America last week. I was in Arizona.
Yes.
And everyone there is so lovely, so beautiful and wonderful and friendly. And I thought Americans were all like you. But they're not.
No,
they're nice ones.
They went to Arizona.
Yeah.
They didn't stay in New York.
Exactly. New York is the problem, isn't it?
Actually, it is the problem. Weather is the problem. The weather here is horrible. The weather in New York is horrible half the time.
It can be.
Yeah.
But it birthed you, and for that, I'm eternally grateful.
So good.
There you are. See, I'm actually nice. How are you, Cressida?
I'm all right. I had to socialise with Lewis last night.
Why?
Well, why indeed? It was the Christmas do.
The Christmas do,
So,
yes.
go and
And
do
how
that.
was Lewis well behaved?
Well, I mean, there was alcohol involved and it was Lewis, so it's not really anything I can talk
That
about
sounds absolutely
on television.
Abominable. OK, so let's get some questions from the audience. The first one is from Andrew. Andrew, hello.
Hello there. Did the COVID pandemic come from the Chinese Wuhan lab, or were globalist billionaire Americans involved, as some conspiracy theorists say?
That sounds like a loaded question, Andrew. But you know what? It's interesting because, well, let's start at the beginning, of course. The massive coronavirus pandemic happens to start in the location which has the biggest coronavirus laboratory in the world. And some of us thought, well, maybe there's a connection. I don't know. Maybe there is. And other people said that was a racist conspiracy theory, didn't they? Well, not anymore. So the US Congress, Cressida, has now released this. It's a document over 500 pages. I had a look. I browsed. But I'm not reading
put it down.
I couldn't put it. It's a real page turner. But it turns out, yeah, probably it did come from Wuhan.
It did come from a lab.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Why is
And of
anyone
course,
surprised?
I'm not surprised. And isn't it far more racist to say, oh, yeah, it's because of their habits of eating bats? Isn't that more sort of...
Yeah,
not
it was like,
on?
oh, somebody copulated with a pangolin or something. Like, no, it's just because you've got a massive coronavirus lab.
Yes.
Right there.
Exactly. Hazard of the job, even if it was all... if none of it was on purpose, it would still be dangerous.
We should say we don't know 100%, but we know basically 99% that this is probably it. You know, all of the major experts are now saying that
Yeah,
this
it's
is the
been a
case.
great week for conspiracy theorists. Another one.
Well, this is the problem. Well, yeah, talking of conspiracy theorists, I mean, this is the problem, Lewis, isn't it? When the conspiracy theorists are proven right. It wasn't a conspiracy theory, it was just common sense, wasn't it?
No, and no. Is that it's a no. The reason they're tracking it there is because they have the codes that do the testing of it.
What are you talking about?
What makes a virus? Here's the point. The point is we're blaming China. China's a horrible country, and they're not our friends, and we got to watch out for them. But the fact that,
That's quite an inflammatory statement already.
Yes.
But I'm going to let you keep going. See
I'm
where
not,
this
I'm not
goes.
saying they're horrible people, but it's a horrible country right now. It might be nice when they get rid of their communist regime, but the truth is that COVID is just the flu, and
It's
the flu,
not just the flu.
It is.
Well, I'll tell you why I know, Lewis, because I
Yeah.
had COVID 3 times, and I've had the flu many, many more times.
Yeah, because you've got a bad attitude, and you were told you're going to get it, and when you're told you're going to get it, you're going to get it.
So I was hypnotised into losing my taste and smell.
Yes.
Darren
because-
Brown is behind all of this, then.
I don't know. Is he Chinese?
Well, there's another conspiracy theory we should look into.
At the end of the day, you can't believe anything that anybody says about this.
I really don't, but least of all you.
Yeah.
But what I'd say, Cressida, I mean, it's an interesting one because, of course, there's all sorts of investigations now.
Yeah.
There is US government funding probably went into the virus lab, gain-of-function research, etc. So
yeah.
And you know, there are some people who are saying, well, is this a form of manslaughter? All these millions of people. I mean, certainly it's negligence.
Potentially, yes, exactly. But I think they're all very well sewn up, aren't they? All the people that produced all of the things that happened in the last few years.
Yeah, but there's probably got to be some accountability here. If they can actually determine once and for all, yes, it leaked from the lab,
Yes.
someone's got to be held accountable.
It's not that.
Well, you don't believe it exists.
I don't believe it exists. Why were people dying? They were dying because they were told you're going to die. It's the same thing with the... I'm not going to mention the other thing, but it's the
Lewis,
same.
Lewis,
Yeah.
but you didn't have COVID.
Yes,
then?
I did. I had it twice. It was registered. But
So you had this non-existent
yeah.
thing. That must have been horrible for you.
Well, I had the flu. I've had the flu also every
Did you
other
lose your
year.
taste and smell?
Yes, as you do when you catch a cold, you lose it.
No, I've never
you lose
done-
it. The reason I didn't die is because I'm on my all-meat diet. If you were healthy, you did not die. But what happened is,
Yeah, but Lewis,
they should be put on trial and put to death because they put people in the hospital. They ram the masks on, not the masks on,
Ventilators.
the ventilators,
Yes.
and they killed them, or they killed
Well,
them.
I think there were obviously there are debates to be had about the efficacy
Yeah.
of that.
Right.
Perhaps you shouldn't be involved necessarily, but I take your point. I don't think, however, your all-meat diet is the solution to absolutely everything. I fear for your cholesterol. If
Yes,
I'm honest.
I would worry about it.
It's quite high, isn't it?
It is high.
I think it's breaking new records.
I
from
wouldn't
what
be
hear.
high next to me.
But you just eat cattle. You just eat cattle. That's all you do.
No, I eat eggs too.
Do you?
I eat cattle, eggs,
Cattle
and cheese.
and eggs.
And cheese. No, I know what the people are saying. They want to blame the Chinese because it's the Chinese. But that's actually taking the thing as it was an irritation causes illnesses.
Okay. Well, there's our medical correspondent, Lewis Schaefer.
Ask the
Very
people if they
qualified,
agree with
very
me.
qualified. He's read at least 12 blogs on the subject. Let's move on to a question now from Jack. Jack, what about you, Jack?
Do we need trigger warnings of it's behind you at
yes.
the Panto?
Whenever Lewis approaches. No, I think at the Panto, yes. I mean, you've been looking at this. Now, which Panto is it? Well, there's a Panto. They're doing Cinderella, aren't they?
Yes.
And they've added a trigger warning to it. They've said they're going to be loud noises. There are often loud noises in Panto, that kind of thing. But they've also said there's other aspects, aren't there, to this, Cressida?
Well, it says it's for under fives and people of a sensitive disposition.
The trigger warnings for under fives.
Yes.
Well, they can't read,
yes.
can they?
Well, no, but you don't need to read to hear a loud noise.
Oh, I see what you mean. But there's also one of the aspects of the trigger warning is it says there are jokes that only adults might get.
Yes.
So why do you need a warning?
Well, that bit I don't understand.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point of Panto, isn't it? If there weren't any jokes that only the adults got, I'd be sorely disappointed.
Yeah, it's a well-crafted pantomime
Yes.
aims at two levels. It's very layered. It's like Ibsen,
very layered,
in a way.
yeah.
OK. Well, I don't think it needs... So I worry about the trigger warning thing. I mean, it's one of those sort of frivolous culture war stories, and you think, does it really matter? We've always had, warnings on films and that kind of thing, so why should we really matter about this? But my worry about this, Lewis, is that when you start applying a trigger warning to absolutely everything, you sort of prep people and suggest that words and entertainment and arts can be triggering and dangerous, almost like a grenade ready to explode. Yeah. And that sort of changes the culture, doesn't it? I don't want a warning on a... I definitely don't want a trigger warning that gives away the plot twist, which I've seen a number of times. That really bothers me.
I kind of agree with you. But at the same time, remember,
that's not like you.
I know, but it doesn't matter. It's like in Catch-22. Remember in Catch-22 when they had loyalty oaths, and you had to go. If you went to the loo, you had to sign a loyalty oath. If you went to had lunch, they were hundreds of times a day you had to sign a loyalty to the U.S. government.
Yeah, well, we haven't gone that far, have we? But you take my point about trigger warnings that they can sort of like give a false impression of the arts.
I find Panto so British.
It is so British, isn't it?
It is so horrifying because it makes you think to yourself, this is going to be amazing. You have this feeling, you hear about it, and then it's so poor. It's like English food.
No, but it's meant to be bad. The Panto is meant to be a bit ropey.
But
it's got a big man in a dress.
The whole concept of this being, not just the show being entertainment, but the people that they're going there and they think this is... Oh, maybe you're right about that.
Yeah, no, I think it is. It's meant to be like that. Panto is one of the great British cultural institutions.
I should have more.
Be most proud of.
I should have more of a discussion with people before.
I think you should be in a Panto. I can see you as a Panto.
I could.
Fairy
I'm
godmother
waiting to be chosen. I'm still stuck here.
Have you been in a Panto, Cressida?
Been to thousands.
You've been to many of them, have you?
I've been in. I don't think so.
No.
No, lots of school plays. But you don't do... That's the point, isn't it? They're not school plays.
No, because they are kind of a bit risque as well.
Exactly.
They sort of tread that line very carefully. Yeah. OK, let's move on now. We've got this question from John. This came in from email. John has asked whether politics should be kept out of sport. This is a reference to the case of Lindsay Smith. This is the Newcastle United fan. And you probably read about her. She's been barred from matches. We covered this on the show a number of months ago. She was barred from matches because she has gender-critical views. She tweeted a few things which the football company, what are they called? What team found offensive. And now she's saying she's going to sue the FA, which apparently means Football Association, in a row over the rainbow armbands. And I think that's it's interesting because my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, Cressida, is that the FA does prohibit political symbols from It's very...
Well, so they say.
Right. This is... The rainbow armband is a political symbol.
Yes.
Which is often misinterpreted as being a philanthropic symbol.
Yes, I suppose that... Yes, exactly. And she's kind of called their bluff and said, if you're going to accuse me of this, I'm going to accuse you of it as well.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, that's smart, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's really funny. I don't quite understand how she can do... I don't understand the legal position, because if it's their rules, surely they can just break their own rules.
Well, maybe they can, although if they set these rules quite specifically and then they break them, it doesn't look good for them. I mean,
Well,
like,
no,
for instance,
exactly.
with the whole kneeling before matches for Black Lives Matter, at the time, a lot of people said, well, this is just a gesture to say that we're against racism. Well, I would assume that everyone is against racism, but never mind. But of course, apart from him. But of course, the problem with that is that BLM, Black Lives Matter, was a supremely political, overtly Marxist identitarian organisation which had a very strong political stance.
Absolutely. I think she's done a really good thing here. I think it's got a comedy element because she's caught them out and had a gotcha moment.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see this unfold and see how they're going to wriggle out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, ultimately, Lewis, if you're flying the Progress Pride flag, and I'm not talking about the old-fashioned rainbow flag, the new one with all the stuff added. You know, I think you are basically flying a flag that supports an ideology that supports the mutilation of children and the erasure of homosexuality. I think it's a homophobic flag. I think it's a misogynistic flag. It also supports the erosion of women's single-sex spaces. So why on earth do these people fly this flag? It's because they don't know what it means.
No, they know what it means. People
really?
know. Yeah,
they just hate women,
know.
gays and kids.
I think the thing is, it's funny because it's in Newcastle. Not funny. Newcastle is a very politically tendentious place. I was up there. They were having, like, just so many jihadis live there.
Is that right?
No,
Geordie jihadi. You mean Geordie?
Geordies.
Okay. I did wonder about that.
They're very... That was a joke. I made a joke.
Equally scary. But the thing is, though, you know, I've been in Newcastle. I performed at Newcastle at the various comedy clubs.
Yes.
One in particular.
Yeah.
It's quite terrifying late at night, isn't it?
I remember I was heckled. because they were so afraid of people, like, speaking out while the show was going on.
Yeah.
That they had constant signs, you know, quiet when the show was on, quiet when the show was on. And one of the people in the audience, the front row, stood up and pointed at the sign, said, you know, quiet while the show was on, and then pointed at me.
Wow.
Like I should be quiet.
What, like the man on the stage with the mic should be quiet?
Well,
I can understand his feeling about
I thought it was funny. But, you know, this woman was persecuted because she was like a lesbian woman, right? A really butch-on lesbian, a very tough lady.
That's not why they say they were.
No,
she was persecuted because she had gender-critical views, and they were saying, you can't come to the matches anymore.
Yes,
which
and
makes no sense.
She was a huge fan.
Yeah.
But who owns that team? That team is owned by... They're owned by...
I have no idea.
They're owned by the Saudi government or somebody.
You've just made that up.
I might.
I mean, you might be right, but I mean,
it is. That's
you should
who
do a little
owns
bit of
it.
research
And maybe
before
they
you say
should be
it.
critical of their own country that they come from, where women can't even drive.
Well, okay. If that's true, that's a very good point. If it's
Ask
not
the-
true,
ask
it's
the
a
audience
shoddy
if they
research.
know.
Okay, let's move on now to a question from Jamie.
This is my worst show ever.
No, you're doing all right, Lisa. So, Jamie, hello.
Hi, Andrew. Has the Western world been hacked by a woke ideology?
A woke ideology, that is the words of Kemi Badenoch, I believe, who wrote this article in The Telegraph this week. Now, she was, you know, I think Kemi's fantastic, actually, and I think she's always on the money with this stuff. Yeah. She's talking about, in that article, I could be wrong, Jamie, she's saying that liberalism itself has been hacked. Yeah, do you think she's right?
I think she's right, yeah.
You do?
We can't say anything nowadays, can we?
Well, you are. You're speaking right now. You're doing all right.
Channel.
Yeah, that's why this channel exists. But what do you think, Cressida?
Well, yeah, I think she's broadly right. I mean, that's why we have this show. I think it's also sort of smacks a little bit of she's gone to America and she's sort of saying all this stuff in the... I don't know what you call it, the fallout from MAGA. Fallout's not the right word, but it's the right time to be saying this.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, you know, I don't think that liberalism has been hijacked. I think that woke is the antithesis of liberalism. So what's happened is that the liberal consensus has just been replaced by an authoritarian consensus. I think that's probably more what it is. What do you think?
I think, as I've always said, there are two teams, and the woke mentality is across every country.
And what are those teams called?
Team World and Team Britain.
There we go. You never thought of a second name for the other team?
No, I never. I don't know. But when you think Britain, I'm in favour of the Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes and the Celts.
The Celts.
And maybe the Picts. But whatever. Who's ever living in the country.
I've told you about this, Lewis. And last time you hijacked the show and ended up talking about the Picts.
Yeah, the
for the
Picts.
whole night. When you're talking about the Picts.
You don't hear, the Celts. Nobody is defending the Romans. There's some Romans. People who came to this country 20 years ago before it was like billions of people coming.
Well, shout out to the Picts who are watching. We've got to move on. But next on Free Speech Nation, a student suspended from her university radio station for expressing gender-critical views will be here to discuss what on earth is going on. Connie Shaw, she'll be joining me next. Don't go anywhere.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Locals in Abingdon in Oxfordshire have signed a petition to keep the name of their local pub, and it's called The Midget. Now, this comes after a university lecturer led an 11-month campaign to change the name of the pub, and the owners, Green King, have caved in. But locals are fighting back, and GB News spoke to one resident, Leanne Thompson, for her thoughts earlier today.
I'm not feeling great about it, to be honest. You know, it's a pub that's been here for a very long time. It's called The Midget after a MG car, and they're changing it to the Roaring Raindrop, which a lot of people are not happy about. We know why they're changing it, but a lady apparently came in who was very upset at the offensive term for the name midget. But nobody here sees it as an offensive term. You don't see the midget and feel any kind of offence towards that. It's named after a car. If she was to actually come, she might actually know more about it, but apparently she's not even been into the pub. She's just heard about it and broadcasted on social media that she wanted the name changed because it's offensive, which as locals don't feel that way. It's the midget. It will always be the midget. And if you look, it's even still on Midget Close. So I don't know if they're going to change it to the Roaring Raindrop Close.
Do you know, you should walk into the Midget now and go, do you serve shorts? And just keep going on the joke. It's named after a car, the MG Midget, that was manufactured in the town of Abingdon for a while. The car was released in 1961. The Boozer was built in 1974, giving huge pride to the area. It wasn't named after midgets, you know, the Snow White and the 7 vertically challenged individuals variety. It's named after a car.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Leeds University student Connie Shaw has hit the headlines after she was allegedly suspended from hosting a campus podcast for holding gender-critical views and for interviewing a detransitioner. So, is free speech under major threat in UK universities? I'm joined now by University of Leeds student Connie Shaw.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I think you deserve a round of applause. Connie. So, for the people who are watching who don't know what happened, perhaps you could just begin at the beginning and tell us exactly what went on.
Yeah, so I was elected as the daytime editor, and I started that role in September, and I was overseeing coverage on Women's Hour, Politics Hour, LGBT Hour, and some other shows. And I also started a podcast of my own at the same time, and I purposely made sure it had nothing to do with LSR because I knew it'd be putting them in a difficult position because I wanted to talk about gender ideology, and I'm gender critical. And so one of my first episodes was with Charlie Bentley-Astor, and she's a detransitioner. There was some backlash about that, but nothing was said directly to me. And then I also did an interview with Graham Linehan. Obviously, we all know what, you know, Graham Linehan is, painted as an anti-trans activist. He's just a women's rights activist. And the day after that, he published an article that I wrote for his Substack. And then the following day after that, I got an email telling me that I had been suspended from Leeds Student Radio for putting the health and safety of other students at risk.
And presumably they cited the article you'd written for Graham Linden's Substack.
No, they didn't cite... Well, yes, they did, actually, sorry. They didn't cite it specifically. I'd written other Substacks before. They just said that the suspension was as a result of my online activity, my Substack and my media productions.
Did they give you any specifics about any of this?
No, and I asked them if they could, so that I could defend myself in the interview, but
of course.
They didn't give me any more information.
This seems to be a common repeated pattern where you've committed a crime but they won't tell you what it is, as in Kafka's The Trial. OK, so what happened next?
So I was invited to an interview, and I went to that interview, and I was told that the investigation was nothing to do with my gender-critical views. But then I was also asked, how do you maintain an inclusive environment at LSR when your choice to publicly publish your views makes some feel unincluded?
So it's not about your views, but it is also about your views?
Yes.
OK.
Because, they can't tell me... I mean, the finding of the investigation, they dropped the allegations of misconduct, but they said I'm guilty because I have brought LSR into disrepute, but they can't tell me what I've done that's done that.
And what was the form of this meeting? Were you summoned, effectively?
Yeah, I had to go to a meeting, and they said that if you don't come to the meeting, the investigation will still continue. And the meeting was just with 2 people who work at the student union.
And, OK, so how did that feel when you were in that situation? Were you baffled? Did you expect this kind of thing?
I mean, to be fair, the whole thing, I was actually surprised it didn't happen sooner.
Right.
But when it did end up happening, I was like, wow, this is actually happening.
Yes.
I mean, the interview itself, I couldn't believe some of the questions that were asked of me. I was asked, how do you support trans rights activists and trans people within LSR considering your own views? I just said the same way I would treat anyone, regardless of whether we disagree or not.
So was there implication there that you must be openly, actively supportive of this particular group? Otherwise you might be violating the
Yes, I mean,
inclusivity
that's the argument that I guess they would put forward, that why would you want to oversee a programme that you don't agree with? But that would be like the same as I wouldn't have... If I didn't select... You know, it'd be ridiculous if I hadn't selected presenters to go on Politics Hour because I disagreed with their politics.
Right. Now, presumably, the people who are investigating you don't really understand the arguments that you're making, because it doesn't sound to me as though they've really read them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Because they're talking about you being antagonistic towards a particular group, but not the case that you're making for women's rights.
Yes.
Which I think is presumably key to what you're doing.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So what will happen next? Do you have any idea?
Well, the Free Speech Union has appealed on my behalf. We haven't heard anything back yet. I don't know whether they'll overturn it or not.
Right.
We'll see.
But my understanding is that they want to re-educate you.
Yeah, so they've said, even though they know I'm graduating next year, so I wouldn't be running for committee anyway, they said if I did want to run again, I could only do so if I provide a written apology to the wider membership and if I undergo mandatory training. What
would the mandatory training entail?
I'm not sure. They said it would be up to the union to decide what that training is.
OK, but it sounds very medieval. Is it public flogging? I mean, what do they have in mind? Is this a broader problem, do you think? I mean, you're at Leeds University, you know, and you obviously are interacting with students on a daily basis. Do you get the sense that there is a kind of monoculture, that there is a sense in which only certain opinions are allowed?
Yeah, I mean, I sit in seminars, a feminist philosophy module that I'm taking, and I'm the only one who's gender critical. If there are others, they don't express their views. And, you know, everyone already knows what I think, so there's no point staying quiet in real life and just spouting online. But, yeah, I have very tense seminars and people don't like what I say.
Do you have people that support what you're saying?
Privately, yeah.
That's very interesting, isn't it? So people are willing to say secretly, yes, I agree with you, but they're not willing to stand up.
Yeah.
But why is that? Is there a climate of intimidation? Is it the fear of what might happen to your career prospects?
Yes, I mean, I've had people tell me that they've had friends tell them to be careful of associating themselves with me. I mean, the whole reason why I purchased my free speech membership was because the person who helped me edit the podcast with Charlie got in trouble with a separate society, and they told him that he needed to disassociate himself from me and my work, and if he didn't, there'd be further actions taken. So at that point, I chose to purchase my membership because I thought, well, if that's going to happen to someone who has just helped me edit, what's going to happen to me, who actually recorded the podcast?
Yeah. Now, presumably, you know, you've said that you were, in a way, anticipating some kind of reaction from the student union. You're aware of the climate that exists on campus. So you must feel very passionately about this subject. Perhaps you could just explain to us why it's so important to you.
Well, I actually used to buy into gender ideology when I was at school. I started to question it just as I left sixth form. And then when that seed had been planted, coming to uni when gender ideology is everywhere, everyone's pronouns are everywhere, you can't not sort of see it. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. And then I met Susan Smith, who's the director for Women Scotland, and we did an interview with her actually on LSR, and I realised I agreed with everything she was saying. And then over the summer, Tickle versus Giggle happened, which was the case in Australia, where Roxanne Tickle, who's a man who identifies as a woman, was found to legally be a woman, and Sal Grover was found guilty of basically discriminating against him on the basis of his gender identity. And that made me so angry that I decided that I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I have had people suggest that I'm a grifter and that I only do this because I just want a career and that I'm just being anti-woke for the sake of it. But at the end of the day, it has had real consequences on my relationships with people.
I mean, I would say that yours is the majority view, but there are very few.
It's not at university, though.
Not at university. That's interesting. So do you think there is a genuine generational divide here? Generational
and also gender divide. I mean, obviously, we can see the stats in terms of the way that the gap is widening between men and women and the left and right. But I think for girls especially, and I think that's possibly a reason why it's become so shocking for people, is that because I'm female saying these things, especially a young female, most young women are, buy into this gender stuff. So I think that maybe becomes more shocking for people, and also because girls are just, I used to be one of those girls. I was obsessed with the idea of just being kind and progressive and striving towards everyone having equal rights. But I've obviously come to realise that the phrase trans rights are human rights does not mean what they say, that, what rights do other people have that trans people don't have?
It's a very good question. Finally, Connie, are you optimistic that this will all resolve itself, or is this just the start of a longer battle?
I mean, it's another battle. It's a start. My thing is another battle in a very long war, I'd say, and hopefully people like me, and I've had other people message me and say thank you so much for talking about this. So I think we're hopefully at the start of the beginning of the end. So yeah, I'm slightly hopeful.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on to explain what happened to you, Connie Shaw, everyone. So, a Leeds University Union spokesperson has said the following: inclusivity is one of our core values, helping to ensure that everyone can enjoy their university experience free from discrimination. Due to ongoing appeal, we are unable to comment further on this case. So there you have it. Anyway, it's Advent, isn't it? And we're counting down to Christmas Day, and it's a Sabbath. So let's hear from a priest.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 8.
Advent is a time of waiting in anticipation to celebrate an extraordinary event that took place just over 2,000 years ago. Waiting in anticipation is something we do often in life. Maybe we're waiting to enjoy the holiday we've been saving up for, or waiting for that email to come through telling us we've been successful in our job application, or waiting to open up the Christmas presents come Christmas Day. The stronger our wanting and longing, the greater the intensity of our anticipating and waiting. Which raises a question: do you know what you most want and long for? In a world full of marketing and social media influencers, shaping our every desire and telling us what we should have, what we need to have, and what we are to experience and how we are to live, do we know what we truly want? Have we lost the ability to know the deepest longings of our hearts? As we approach the celebration of Christmas, we're reminded that Jesus Christ came down to earth as God in the flesh. It reminds us that the human soul belongs to God and was created for God, to enjoy God now and forever when Jesus returns. This is Emmanuel, God with us.
So as it's Advent, you'll get a special message every single day from a different priest. Imagine an Advent calendar, but it's not chocolates, it's a priest every day. And if you want to see all of those messages, just go to gbnews.com/Advent. So next on Free Speech Nation, a mental health professional launches a new service pledging to erase ideologies from therapy. Is it time to rethink how we treat mental health? James Esses will be joining me in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After an unsettled weekend, it is still going to be windy in the south, clearer skies overnight in the north before higher pressure builds into the new week. So we still do have a squeeze in the isobars, indicating some strong and gusty winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but higher pressure towards the north. So a cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through Monday, with brisk winds still, especially along the south coast, with some showers most frequent in the southeast. Drier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but it will be a cold start to the day with a touch of frost in places. But that does mean a bright start across much of Scotland, with plenty of winter sunshine to start the day, perhaps even with some freezing fog patches around that may be slow to lift. Across Northern Ireland, plenty of blue sky once again, but there will be a touch of frost too, so cold start out there. Some glimmers of sunshine, especially across western areas of England and Wales, but often quite cloudy as we go through the afternoon. So there is going to be a lot of cloud around and some outbreaks of rain, especially across the south and east and across the English Channel too. But there will be some breaks in the cloud, the best of the sunshine once again across Northern Ireland and Scotland. It will be cold here though, with temperatures struggling here at around 5 or 6 degrees, but across the south holding up at around 8 or 9 degrees. So it's going to be another cold start across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we start Tuesday morning with a widespread frost. A lot of cloud across much of England and Wales. Again, thick enough just for some patchy rain and drizzle at times, but for most of us it's largely dry, and as we go through the week, higher pressure remains, but it'll be still largely cloudy with some overnight frost and fog. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So a mental health professional has unveiled a groundbreaking new service dedicated to removing ideological influences from therapy sessions. James S's Just Therapy aims to ensure that therapy remains neutral and focused solely on the well-being of the client, free from external biases or agendas. So James S's joins me now. Welcome to the show, James.
Thanks, Andrew.
A lot of people will be watching and thinking, what on earth is going on? Why would a therapy session have any kind of ideological bias to begin with?
Oh, quite right. But shall I give you a few examples of ideological capture within the therapeutic profession?
Please do.
A few months ago, NHS Trust advertised some vacancies for trainee psychologists. They said that those trainees would have to practice using a, quote, anti-white lens.
Wow, OK. Any others?
Of course, yes. I've spoken to some students at a training institute, and Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, some of the forefathers of psychotherapy and psychology, they have been removed from the syllabus altogether on the basis that they are, quote-unquote, dead white men.
OK.
I was invited to give a talk to a group of psychotherapists on gender ideology, and they were so triggered by my mere presence in the building that they had to organise an emergency safe space to take place at the same time.
Right, you mean an actual literal safe space?
Correct.
Somewhere they could go with dogs and crayons and that kind of thing?
Precisely.
So explain this to me, because, you know, if someone is seeking therapy and they're a white male,
yes,
and they go along, are they likely to be berated, or will that inform the therapist's practice?
Well, therapists have been encouraged on their training courses now to actually bring up differences in skin colour between a therapist and a client. I mean, I've spoken to people who have been judged by their therapist for their political views, who have refused to work with them because they found out they supported Brexit, for example.
So how does that help the therapeutic process to be berated by the person who's meant to be helping you?
Well, quite right. It's actually anti-therapeutic. It seems to be there to kind of, I don't know, pacify therapists' own kind of political or activist mentality. But it's, you know, it's quite concerning. I had a former client, straight white man, God forbid, and he was going through a tough time in his life. His previous therapist said that he had nothing to complain about because of his inherent privilege.
Well, I mean, that's just staggering. That is absolutely staggering. So someone seeking therapy was told, you're privileged, get over it.
Correct.
OK, so there's obviously a problem within the industry. This is widespread, as it is in many institutions at the moment.
Yes.
So you're doing something about it. What is it you've done?
I've set up a new directory and association for therapists who are going to be signed up to a set series of principles: non-judgment, no identity politics, non-affirmation, resilience, crucially, and also free speech. And this is offering a community for these therapists, strength in numbers, but also a gateway for prospective clients to find a therapist who isn't going to just push this ideology on them in the therapy room.
Now, can you explain the point of all of this? Because, I mean, surely most people don't get into therapy for the purposes of political activism. So is it the case that they're just being either trained to become activists or that they are going along with something they don't necessarily believe because they feel that is what they are expected to do?
I do think some people are going to therapy to push their own narrative on clients. I seriously do. I think some people view themselves as activists first and therapists second. I think back to my own training, and I certainly saw some of those characters there. But equally, the training courses and the accreditation bodies are telling these therapists that, you know, you must go along with things such as critical race theory and gender ideology, and if they don't, then they might find themselves disciplined or, as happened to me, essentially excommunicated from the profession altogether.
Do you want to explain what did happen to you, just for anyone who isn't aware?
Yeah, so I was studying a master's degree in psychotherapy. I was 3 years into the course. I was concerned by gender ideology, the impact on children. I wrote a petition to the government, and then one day I received an email from the course leader saying that I was expelled with immediate effect.
That's absolutely astonishing, although, given some of the stories I've heard on this programme, it's not surprising. Do you think, though, that there has been a turning point insofar as we've had the Cass review, there's the Supreme Court case going on in the US, another Supreme Court case going on in the UK. Gender ideology is being held up to scrutiny in a place where it cannot hide, in other words, in the courts. And of course, because it is a belief system, a kind of pseudo-supernatural belief system, it doesn't sustain itself under those circumstances. Do you think ultimately it's going to turn and everything will revert to something resembling normalcy?
I'm not convinced, Andrew, because I feel that this has infiltrated our lexicon, our entire culture and way of being. I write exposés on corporations who are pushing this stuff day in, day out on their employees. People are walking on eggshells still when it comes to pronouns and things like that. So even though people have seen the light to some extent, even though the government has commissioned this research, even though myself and others have won litigation in this space, I can't see it going anywhere quick, to be honest with you.
So that's a worry, isn't it? Because even though all of the court cases end up going the right way on this issue, the activists double down. That seems to be their response, not to reflect, not to modify their behaviour, but to do so even more extremely.
Well, they kind of view it with a sense of religious fervour. I mean, I went undercover to some training courses and workshops post the publication of the Cass review, and some of these individuals were saying that essentially the findings should be ignored on the basis that she is just a cisgender woman. You know?
That's amazing. And of course, in America, you had medical practitioners denying the efficacy of the Cass review for ideological reasons, even though they knew that it had some basis. Or not just that, it was the most rigorous study into paediatric gender care that there's ever been. However, things are hopefully changing, and your new therapy initiative is part of that. So just can you remind people where people can find out about it and how they can read more about what you're up to?
Yeah, it's just-therapy.org. We've got about 50 or 60 practitioners there if you're looking for a non-woke therapist. I'm also going back into private practice myself, which will upset and frustrate many people, which is quite delicious, I must admit. So you can search my name, James Esses, on Google. I'm offering a limited number of slots for clients. And I'm writing exposés on Substack each and every week about the infiltration of this ideology into society.
Yeah, and it's an excellent Substack, and I would recommend everyone follow you on that. James Esses, thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, later in the show, I'll be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Lewis Schaefer and Cressida Wetton, and they'll help you deal with all your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems at all, you can either go to James's therapy or you can message us at gbnews.com/your say. And next on Free Speech Nation, the victim of a German terror attack has been convicted of anti-Islam hate speech. So, is two-tier policing becoming an international problem? Don't go anywhere.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa entitled World Front for Combat Against Jews and Crusaders, and President George W. Bush talked of a crusade on terrorism. In 2010, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula sent a parcel bomb to New York. It was addressed to Reginald of Chatillon. The addressee had died at the hands of Saladin in 1187. Those facts suggest that the long history of struggle between Christendom and Islamic caliphates remains relevant, at least to some militant Islamists. That being the case, perhaps we should all understand the past. General Sir Simon Mayle, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff Operations, can be our teacher, particularly if we want to know in gory detail about battles to control Jerusalem, Constantinople, Vienna and the Eastern Mediterranean. His new book is called The House of War. It's an excellent read, which perhaps ought to figure in a national adult curriculum. And he joins me. Well, let's begin with the word crusade. What was it that drove Christians around Europe to want to cross to the Holy Land and seize Jerusalem?
Context and timing is really important to understand. It's been rather stereotyped as Christian aggression against peace-loving Muslims. The Islamic religion had burst out of the desert in the 7th century with the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And for the next nearly 400 years, had Christianity, Christendom, the Christian states absolutely on the back foot. It took the Holy Land, destroyed the Persian Empire, took the North Africa, which was Christian at the time, including Egypt, of course, took Spain all the way into Tours, Charles Martel. 100 years after the death of the Prophet, it expanded in an extraordinary state.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Patrick Christys. This is GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Michael Sturzenberger, the victim of a terror attack in Germany, has been convicted of anti-Islam hate speech, sparking outrage and concerns over fairness. This case raises serious questions about two-tier policing and whether unequal treatment based on ideology is becoming an international issue. So, joining me now is the German correspondent for Spiked Online, Sabine Beppler-Spal. Sabine, thanks so much for joining me tonight. You wrote an article on Spike this week about this case. Could you just give us some background to the individual that you're discussing?
Well, yeah, thank you for inviting me tonight. Well, Michael Sturzenberger is actually not that well known. He's fairly famous as a critic of radical Islam. He says he only criticizes political Islam. He used to be fairly mainstream, actually a member of the German Conservatives. But he says he became he began to look very critically at Islam after his friend died in the 2008 Mumbai bombing terror attack. And he then left the Conservative Party. He started campaigning against Islam. He says political Islam is a threat to Europe. He started he founded an organization. He's now on the board of an organization called Pax Europe. They've been doing stands throughout Germany, in German cities. He's been talking to people on megaphones. He's told them that Islam is not so much a religion, but a political ideology, that most crimes have been committed by Muslims. Many women have been raped, he says, by Muslims in Germany. And because of his activities, he's had several problems, several confrontations with the police and with the German law. The German legal system is very, very repressive to what it deems to be hate speech. And because of one of his activities in 2020, he was charged for enticing, what was called enticing violence and race hatred.
So he's been prosecuted for incitement to violence, but he himself was stabbed.
That's correct. That was then in May this year, 2024. We had a terrible terrorist incident involving his organization and his group. 6 people were injured during one of his rallies by an Afghan asylum seeker who just sort of came and up to them and stabbed them out of the blue. 6 people were injured and 1 policeman was killed.
So just to be clear, so they were the victims of the terrorist attack, this group, Pax Europe. Yeah. So I just want to ask about this because obviously some of the things that he might be saying and that the group might be saying will cause offence, inevitably, because they're attacking someone's belief system, they're criticising a belief system. But surely the criticism of any belief system, whether that be a religion or a political ideology, shouldn't be a matter for the German state, should it?
No. You might imagine that the German state would defend him against attacks from radical Islamists and defend his right to say what he believes is right. But that's not what they've been doing. So the case, he's been convicted. That case goes back to a time before he was actually stabbed, and he's actually already been convicted to 6 months in prison. He appealed against that, and what we saw just last month was a case of appeal, and the court reduced the sentence, reduced it to 3,600 euros fine, and they said they would reduce it because he had already suffered so much through this Islamist incident.
Can I just clarify this, Sabine? Sorry. You say that he was prosecuted for incitement to violence. Did he actually say something or call for violent activity to take place towards Muslim people?
No, he doesn't. He didn't. He didn't. He just says we shouldn't have immigration from Muslim countries to the extent that we have. And he actually says he's not against the people. He always makes that point very clearly. He says he's not opposed to the people. He's only opposed to the religion. And he says we have a problem in Europe. That's his opinion. We shouldn't be having mosques. He doesn't want to hear the muezzin call for a prayer in the middle of Europe. It's a very strong opinion. It's very clear he can get up people's nose. It's very clear he's annoyed.
I don't deny that his opinions will cause offence. I suppose the thing that concerns me here is the idea that the German state is saying that someone taking an oppositional stance to an ideology should be criminalised for it. Is it the case that in Germany criticism of Islam is now just not allowed?
Yes, I mean, that seems to be the case. I mean, the German courts would say criticism of Islam, as long as it's reasonable, as long as it's still peaceful, we might allow that. But Germany's enticement to violence and race hatred law goes very, very far, as you can see. And the irony of this case is that it's basically a public threat being, everybody now knows that criticizing Islam can get you into big trouble in Germany. So there is this terrible irony in this case, which is that the German state has clamped down on somebody criticizing Islam, and an Islamist murderer has also tried to silence him through murder. So he's being squeezed from 2 sides. He's under threat from Islamist radicals, and he's also under threat from the German state.
But
So
acknowledging,
that makes it a very,
acknowledging the problem shouldn't be an issue. I mean, we had the Berlin chief of police telling gay people and Jewish people not to be overtly gay and Jewish in Berlin in certain areas where Arab immigrants predominate. So that suggests there is a problem, doesn't it?
Well, yes, and I think that's why the state is becoming especially nervous. There's always this kind of fear of a tipping point being reached. There's this idea that, we're going to try and muddle through. We're going to try and keep things as stable as we can. But with problems growing, with more and more people getting restless, so this is the main point of contagion, which is why he's seen as such a terrible dissident. So if he was talking about something else, nobody would care. But because he's talking about an issue which a lot of people are very concerned about, and because he's giving voice to people's fear of an increase of Muslim immigration, I think he's being vilified. I think he's being picked on. I think it's as simple as that. It's almost like he's not only voicing an opinion, he's attacking the very fundamentals of the state,
Well, I would
he's
say,
attacking...
Absolutely, Sabine. I'm sorry we're out of time, but I would say that, the idea that gay people and Jewish people should keep themselves hidden, that's been said in Berlin before. There's a kind of chilling precedent here. Anyway, Sabine, thanks very much for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it. So that's the end of the first hour on Free Speech Nation, but please don't go away. We've got so much more to come between now and 9 o'clock. Please don't go anywhere.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After an unsettled weekend, it is still going to be windy in the south, clearer skies overnight in the north before higher pressure builds into the new week. So we still do have a squeeze in the isobars, indicating some strong and gusty winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but higher pressure towards the north. So a cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through Monday, with brisk winds still, especially along the south coast, with some showers most frequent in the southeast. Drier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but it will be a cold start to the day with a touch of frost in places. But that does mean a bright start across much of Scotland, with plenty of winter sunshine to start the day, perhaps even with some freezing fog patches around that may be slow to lift. Across Northern Ireland, plenty of blue sky once again, but there will be a touch of frost too, so cold start out there. Some glimmers of sunshine, especially across western areas of England and Wales, but often quite cloudy as we go through the afternoon. So there is going to be a lot of cloud around and some outbreaks of rain, especially across the south and east and across the English Channel too. But there will be some breaks in the cloud, the best of the sunshine once again across Northern Ireland and Scotland. It will be cold here though, with temperatures struggling here at around 5 or 6 degrees, but across the south holding up at around 8 or 9 degrees. So it's going to be another cold start across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we start Tuesday morning with a widespread frost. A lot of cloud across much of England and Wales. Again, thick enough just for some patchy rain and drizzle at times, but for most of us it's largely dry, and as we go through the week, higher pressure remains, but it'll be still largely cloudy with some overnight frost and fog. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, unfortunately not. We're seeing a lot of, as you mentioned, delayed treatment, non-treatment. And I think that you have to remember that it takes 5 years to train a dentist, right? To get them through college and then into the VT training. So unfortunately, none of this can be done overnight. And we are seeing a lot of long-term issues. Like Eamon mentioned, his mother hadn't seen the dentist in a number of years and then needed a number of teeth taken out. And so we're seeing people not go for treatment early enough and then leading to more extensive treatments like root canals and extractions that are more severe but also more costly.
But Vanessa, I always look at this and think, why is there a problem? My view is, surely the state should sponsor anyone who wants to be a dentist and pay for their training in return for that person signing up to work for the NHS for a number of years, 8 years, 10 years, whatever, then they can do what they want. Why don't we have a system like that?
Well, that would be an excellent solution and definitely something that we could look at in the long term. I think that when you think about people who are going into dentistry, you know, I know a lot of my colleagues and stuff went to Australia to travel and to explore straight after college as well.
And avoid paying back the debt.
Yeah, and you know, the rising population, I suppose we're probably just not producing as many dentists to target and to treat us as a nation efficiently.
GB News, the People's Channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, but let's get a news update first from Sophia Wensler.
Andrew, thank you. Good evening. It's 8 o'clock. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Russian state media says Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is in Moscow with his family, with Kremlin sources saying they've been granted asylum there. It comes as people are emptying the streets as rebel forces impose a curfew in Damascus after taking control of the capital, marking a dramatic fall in Assad's regime and forcing him to flee. US President Joe Biden has called it a moment of historic opportunity for the long-suffering people of Syria to build a better future. Here in the UK, around 100 Syrians have arrived at Piccadilly Circus in London to celebrate the fall of the Assad regime. Meanwhile, the Foreign Office has been evacuating British nationals ahead of the offensive, though the exact numbers remain unclear. And the Prime Minister says the UK welcomes the fall of Assad's barbaric regime in Syria.
I welcome the fact that Assad has gone. The Syrian people had to put up with his brutal regime for far, far too long. We're talking to regional allies. It's very important now that there's a political settlement, a political way forward. And it's very, very important that we emphasise that civilians and minorities must be protected in this process. But very, very pleased that Assad has fallen.
In other news, strong winds are hammering the UK just days after Storm Dara left 2 men dead and thousands without power. A yellow weather warning is in place with gusts of up to 70 miles an hour, threatening more blackouts and travel chaos. Flooding fears are rising too, with over 200 alerts issued across England, Wales and Scotland. 200,000 homes are still without electricity after the storm brought 93-mile-an-hour winds on Saturday. Now, a man has died in a fire in Cumbria, with emergency services still at the scene and people warned to stay away from the town. Cumbria Police said the victim in his 40s was found in the property in Kirby Lonsdale and pronounced dead at around 6:30 a.m. The fire broke out at the apartments opposite the Red Dragon pub in Main Street. And the Prince of Wales has been helping serve Christmas lunch at a homeless shelter run by a charity that he was introduced to by his mother. William wore one of the Passage charity's aprons as he joined long lines of volunteers serving food while chatting with attendees on Thursday. He first visited the London-based homelessness charity more than 30 years ago with his late mother, Diana, the Princess of Wales. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So let's get some more questions from the studio audience. Our first question for this section comes from Stephen. Where is Stephen? Hello.
Is diversity training to blame for the increase in racism claims?
So that's a very interesting point that has been raised this week in an article. I think it was in The Telegraph. Did you read this one, Cressida?
Yes.
So what's going on here?
Well, it proves that advertising works, doesn't it? There was a study where people were separated into two groups. One group were told to read some stuff about microaggressions, about racism. The other group read something that was neutral, I guess.
Yes,
I don't know
yes.
what they read. And then they were given a scenario about somebody not being hired. And in the first group, they attributed this to racism, whereas in the second group, they didn't. And in fact, in the imagined scenario, there was no racism, or none intended anyway.
So are you suggesting that all of this kind of obsession with race and group identity actually creates racism rather than solves the problem?
Well, that's what it looks like.
Doesn't it
I mean,
just?
you could argue that it just makes us more sensitive to something that already exists.
Yeah,
but
I'm
my
not so
feeling
sure.
is...
I mean, when you've got people like Ibram X. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo basically saying all white people are irredeemably racist, and if they deny that they're racist, that just proves that they're racist. You know, and then you have things like the American school in London dividing school kids up by skin colour for after-school activities in the name of progress. I'm not surprised that we end up with a more racist society through this stuff. Lewis, you're bound to give me an opposing view. Let's hear it.
No, I mean, it's like the doctors, and doctors, it's in medical school, they all think they come up with the diseases that they're reading about. So that's totally logical. The truth is this... I know it's hard to believe, but this is not going to be around forever, this whole wokeism.
I hope not.
I don't think it is. I think it's like in America. I think the spell has been broken because when Trump won and so many people more people voted for him than they thought, that they were the dominant group in the country.
Yeah, people are sick of it.
They're sick of it.
And particularly among ethnic minority groups, support for Trump went up hugely. Yeah. And, this is very interesting, isn't it? Because, we were sort of doing so well. You had the great civil rights luminaries of the 1960s and 70s. You had Martin Luther King saying that we should treat people by the content of their character, not the colour of their skin. And we were moving in that direction. And now we have people coming along saying, well, Martin Luther King was just a racist. Basically.
Yeah. Well, I blame women for this.
But you blame women for everything, Lewis.
I do.
And I think that's more to do with your failed marriages.
I think it is. No, you can blame women, or you can just give them credit. You can say, because women are very, touchy-feely, sensitive, caring, and stuff like that.
You think it's the feminization of society?
It is. It's like the lady that was speaking on the earlier part of the show, where she said that it's all the women, or the girls, whatever, all the women at this university she goes to, who are caring about pretending or whatever, believing to care about people.
Well, remind me, was your first marriage a huge success or massively dysfunctional?
No, I'm not. No,
I'm just trying to join the dots. I'm just trying to join the dots.
Can we get her right
what do you think?
Well,
Cressida?
as usual with Lewis, there's a grain of truth in there, in the madness. I mean, feminisation. Typically, this over-caring thing is what leads to this. I get what he's getting at. But no, of course, there's as many men involved in the culture wars in this stuff.
I would say, there are men and women
because
involved.
Because we want to be nice. Us guys don't care about being nice as much as women. Women care about people's feelings. And
that's a bad thing?
It can be
open
yes.
to...
If it's overdone, it's a bad thing.
I just think it's you talking about feminisation. You're not exactly the most manly man, are you?
No,
well, you're not. You're not Arnold Schwarzenegger, are you? No. OK, let's move on. Let's get a question. Who's our next question from? It will be from Heather. Heather.
Yes, hello. So everybody's favourite mayor, Sadiq Khan, is he deserving of a knighthood or not?
Do you think he's deserving of a knighthood?
Oh, I think he's absolutely not deserving of a knighthood.
Oh,
I think he encapsulates everything that a knight would not encapsulate.
A knight should be riding off to retrieve a sword from a lake or fight some kind of
Honourable,
lizard.
yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
honour, you know, that kind of
He
thing.
can have it as long as he can get the armour on and actually go to a jousting event and do that. And I'll let him have it.
No, look, he is a divisive figure. He uses the public firework displays to promote his own political messaging. He bans adverts on the tube if he thinks that women are too scantily clad in them. He said that, you know, bombs and terrorism is just part and parcel of living in the big city.
Oh.
This isn't someone really who's done a great job, let's be honest.
No, I think it's infuriating. I think there'll be a lot of people handing theirs back, you know, and...
Well, they're knighthoods.
Yes, they'll say, I don't want this anymore.
Because it's tainted by
It doesn't
Sadiq
mean
Khan.
anything anymore. Yeah, I think
But
it's a poor decision.
You want someone who's for all Londoners and all people.
Yes.
He seems to be more concerned about what people say online than, you know, all the knife crime.
Yeah,
which I would suggest
absolutely.
should be a priority. for
Absolutely,
him.
that would be the #1 thing, wouldn't it? Knife crime's horrific.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I completely agree. He's not my knight.
Yeah, but yet he keeps being voted in. You know, I find it astonishing.
I don't know if it keeps. I think he's been re-elected.
Re-elected?
That was once. And
twice, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's more than
It's more than once.
The point is, he's a bit. If you believe in this royalty stuff, which you guys English people,
You mean
love
like
that
knighthoods
stuff.
and that kind
like
of thing?
knighthood, like the king and and these people are somehow better than us and they deserve something, and the fact is, it's not really a democracy in this country. You got one party that says we're going to give this guy something, then this is what you're going to get.
Okay.
You have to basically, the greatest source of evil in this country is the royal family.
Lewis, if you were offered a knighthood, what would you say?
Of course I would take it.
Of course you would take it. There we go. Let's get.
But that doesn't mean it's a good thing.
Let's get. Lewis, I have to put a stop. I'm not silencing your free speech. We can talk later. Right. So we got a question from via email now. This is from Joanna, and Joanna says, "Is it right to call someone a rainbow blasphemer?" Which is presumably about the LNER case, where the train company spent £58,000 repainting one of its trains with the the rainbow pride livery, all the rest of it. And when a passenger asked why and submitted a Freedom of Information request, she was called a transphobe. So they didn't have to answer her because she's a bigot.
Well, they're wrong because it's a Freedom of Information request and they do have to tell her how they're spending our money.
Well, it's a publicly funded body which has spent 58 grand on nauseating, tasteless colours, which don't represent gay rights, but represent the exact opposite of gay rights.
And politics doesn't belong on a train, the way it doesn't belong in football and all of that stuff. And
Yes.
this person called them out on it and said, how are you spending the tax dollar? And they've reacted badly. And then gone through her tweets.
Unbelievable.
Said, this person seems to have an unhealthy interest in this issue. And it's like, yeah, and she's entitled to have an interest in this issue.
Yes. But do you think they would put communist symbols onto a train or, symbols about Edmund Burke or something?
Ideas, Andrew.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, if you're going to do political messaging on a train, particularly messaging that suggests that it's OK to sterilise kids if they're gay, I would say that maybe the public has a right to ask why you're spending so much money promoting outright nonsense. What do you think?
We have 4 years of this.
What, before it ends?
Before it ends.
Really? You think so?
No,
because people are getting so fed. I mean,
They are getting fed up,
It
but
doesn't seem that way because we're in Britain and no one expresses their feelings or emotions. They have none.
Yeah.
And so, but it
That's
is.
true. We're all dead inside, I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you're not quite dead. But,
on life support.
Yeah. And eventually people will go, no, this is. And they'll be laughing at this. I don't know how to deal with it right now.
Yeah, but what are they thinking? They're thinking. I'm trying to get into their mindset. Is it that we have to paint the rainbow colours on a train, or gay people will think the trains are not for them?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Because I've never had a problem getting a train.
It's like what the lady said about feelings and women care about. I don't know if she said this, but I'm.
Yeah, you're paraphrasing. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that they care about feelings and we want to make sure people feel welcome, and it must be horrible to be gay. This is what they're thinking. It must be horrible.
Well, it can be.
It can be. It can be horrible to be trans, whatever. This is what they're thinking. It must be horrible to be black. There's such racism amongst these people. So
you're saying it's a kind of patronising, looking down on people, saying we need to show... Because the thing is, it's not like if a train doesn't have the rainbow flag, I'm thinking, oh, well, it must be staffed by a bunch of homophobes. Then.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Because you you and I agree it's not bad to be gay. It's delightful. But
well, I know you've had a lot of fun with it.
Yes, and as you should. You should.
Yeah.
But they're thinking it must be horrible. So we've got to go out of our way to make it seem like you're all welcome here. Next thing you know, they'll put like people in just ugly people on the train.
Symbols saying ugly people are welcome.
Fat people are
welcome. Well, OK, there's an idea for you, Ellen.
People who are dyslexic.
Yeah, put up some signs. Just let the fat, ugly people know that they're allowed to ride on your train, OK? Yeah. But charge them extra for the extra seat, of course. Now, let's get a question from Jaden. Where's Jaden? Hi, Jaden.
Hi. Has UCLA in America become anti-Semitic in light of Jewish applicants being no-listed by a Cultural Affairs Commissioner there?
Yeah, that is a good question. And this was actually a shocking story. The UCLA student, effectively, they've said that they're refusing to hire Jewish applicants, aren't they? They've got a no-hire list,
a no-hire
right?
list. If you mention that you're Jewish, and this isn't even about being a practicing Jew, this is about being...
The ethnicity?
Yes.
Visiting Jew.
Well, no, we'll come to you in a minute. But go on.
Yeah, so Lewis, who I don't
Lewis,
think,
who is not a practicing Jew, but...
would be banned, and not for the right reason, not because it's Lewis, but because he's Jewish.
Yeah. OK, so, OK, so who are these people? Why are they making these lists?
Well, I think it's a student politician.
It's a student politician saying... I mean, look, this is the problem with universities generally, and there is a problem with anti-Semitism on university campus. I know you deny this all the time, but I've seen evidence of it, right? Isn't this just proof that sometimes, you've got to tackle this stuff, haven't you?
No, I don't think you need to, because, first of all, students are generally stupid. Yeah. That's why, and they admit that they're stupid, they're going for an education.
Yes. Only a stupid person would want to be educated.
Exactly. No, only somebody who doesn't know something would actually say, I'm going to be educated. People like us, I don't see me enrolling in anything. I think I know it all. And is there anti-Semitism? Of course there is. That's the price. I know many Jews, and there is a reward for being Jewish. People go, oh my God, you're so smart, you're a Jew. You're so, you must have a lot of money, you're a Jew. And meanwhile, you're...
Do they say that about you, really?
Yes, I got married that way. My wife looked at me, you could see the way her eyes lit up. Oh, she's a Jew.
He must be rich and intelligent.
Yes.
And her disappointment was palpable.
I got an apartment in New York because my landlord looked, oh, Jewish guy. Oh, I like Jewish guy. You could see. But that happens. Because everybody knows you get looked at for something. They think, wow, I met
How are you not offended by this? UCLA saying no Jews can apply. How are you not offended by that as a Jewish
Because I can't demand the world be nice to Jews more than they are already.
Well, I can demand that I want everybody to have equal rights. Just everybody.
Exactly.
As a human.
And who's going to enforce that?
Honouring that.
And who's going to enforce this equal rights, this magically, some government centralised enterprise, which is horrible.
OK, well...
So you might as well it's a bad thing. And
of course it's a bad thing.
And if I gone to UCLA, I wouldn't have sent them any money. I would take back my multi-million-pound
That's actually a very good call. I think actually multimillionaires, alumni who are funding these universities, who are promoting these kind of policies, just take your money away. Like, those are not the universities you used to know. They're now basically kind of ideological sausage factories. So just just totally get rid of them. No offence to Jewish people. OK, so let's move on now to... we've got to go to break. Sorry about that. Free Speech Nation. Coming back in a minute, we're going to be talking about the US Supreme Court, which is expected to uphold a Tennessee state ruling to ban gender-reaffirming treatment. So please don't go anywhere.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, you know, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up, it's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday, we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. The US Supreme Court is expected to uphold a Tennessee ruling banning gender-affirming treatments for minors, a decision that could shape the national debate. Supporters see it as protecting children, while critics argue it restricts rights. So is this a sign of the system pushing back against gender ideology? What do you think about this one, Cressida?
Absolutely, I think it is. I think people are probably sort of waking up to some of the horrors that have happened to people. Well, you've had guests on this show, detransitioners, whose lives are changed forever.
Yes.
No going back. And that's probably taken some time to sort of permeate and get into people's consciousness. Because when you first hear about trans treatment, gender-affirming care,
yeah.
you think, wow, isn't modern medicine amazing? And that's usually before you really understand what it is.
It's a very interesting one because I've spoken, as you say, to detransitioners, people who feel that they were coerced into taking these procedures by medical practitioners and then regretted it. And there was even one individual who appears in this film, The Lost Boys, which is a new film about detransitioners. And he says that when he was on the table and they were injecting him with the anaesthetic, at that point, he thought, I don't want this to happen. And then he passed out. And he woke up without his genitalia. And at that point, we're now completely having all these people who are effectively saying this is medical malpractice. They've been put down this line. And why have they done it? It's because the medical establishment believes in a thing called gender identity, a kind of soul, and that they have to align the body with the soul. But there's no evidence that such a thing exists. So how do we... Well, it doesn't exist. So how do we get that far?
I'd find it extraordinary. I mean, I feel quite late to discovering this because I've only sort of understood it for a couple of years, something like that. It's obviously been going on a lot longer.
Yeah.
So I really struggle to answer that, how we got here. How anybody ever thought this was reasonable?
Yeah. I mean, Lewis, I dread to ask you about it, but let's do it. Don't you think, though, that at this, it's all very well us talking about woke issues and culture war issues and saying it's all very frivolous, but we're dealing with kids who are mutilated. We've had young girls having double mastectomies. Girls who are under the age of 16 having double mastectomies in the US because the doctor says you're actually a boy. That's not something we should ever justify, is it?
Well, the question is, how do you stop it if you want to stop it? Maybe you should let people... I personally believe you should let people do whatever they want to do.
Kids, though?
You should even let parents... It's their kids, and if they get...
But they were very manipulated, weren't they? If somebody says to you, would you rather have a daughter or a dead son, or whatever that phrase was, that they implied...
So that was a really common phrase, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The idea that, you know, that's the choice that you face. But we now know from the Cass review and from the various studies that have been done, there is absolutely no link. That the suicidal ideation does not increase on the basis of this. So it's not true that those individuals, those kids who are struggling, who no doubt have their various issues, they're not more likely to kill themselves if you don't give them puberty blockers and put them onto pathway to surgery. We know that's not true, but organisations are still repeating it. And now, interestingly, we've got the ACLU, who are the ones who are taking this case to the Supreme Court, and they're challenging it in the Supreme Court. I think it's roughly 26 states are currently now banning gender-affirming care. And effectively, gender-affirming care is the idea that when a kid goes along to the doctor and says, I think I'm in the wrong body, you have to affirm it. You have to automatically say, yes, you are. That is correct. And now you must take the drugs, and now you must do, you know, the various surgeries. That's the problem that we have to deal with now, Lewis, isn't it? That we, like, how do you... It's all very well dealing with activists, but what do you do when the experts are now activists?
You let the experts do what they do, and then you take them to court later and you put them out of business.
Well, that's what's happening, isn't it? There's going to be lawsuits.
I mean, I think this. I think if a state, a lot of the healthcare funding in America comes from the states.
Yes.
So if a state doesn't want to support this, they say, well, if your hospital performs any of these surgeries, you're not going to get money for your diabetes, for your cancer machines or anything.
Do you think people are going to be arrested for this? I mean, there are doctors who took a Hippocratic oath saying first do no harm, who have actually been responsible for the mutilation of children. But at some point, surely there's got to be either, if it's not lawfare, could it not be criminal prosecution?
Well, those people who practice that actually are doing it from the feminization of this woke theory of, like, let's be nice to people, and these kids are going to die unless we do it. So they're doing it...
You think they genuinely believe that?
They totally genuinely... You don't cut off somebody's penis unless you genuinely believe it's going to help them. You got to be
That's
a really...
not necessarily true.
Maybe there are a few who would do that for fun, but I think, generally speaking, what these people are doing is so morally bankrupt that they have to actually believe it.
I think Lewis does make a point, again, a kernel of truth, insofar as there's a lot of good intentions behind this absolute horror show which has occurred. But, you know, we covered the WPATH files on this show where it was discovered that the world's leading body, WPATH, which is the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, this is the world's leading body in paediatric gender care, that the experts within that organisation knew for a fact that many of their patients could not possibly give informed consent. Sometimes they were underage, sometimes they had mental health issues, sometimes they were homeless. There were individuals who they knew were probably just going to grow up gay if they were left alone and allowed to go through puberty. And the shocking thing about the WPATH files is that all of that information, which was leaked, for a start, proved that the experts knew that what they were doing was unethical. But then it wasn't reported on, apart from on this channel, it wasn't reported in the mainstream media or the news at all. This is the biggest medical scandal of the last 100 years. It's up there with lobotomies. And that's what's at stake with this US Supreme Court
case. But lobotomies, they didn't have to pass laws against lobotomies.
Well, actually, in lobotomies, they thought they were desperate. They were thinking, what can we do about this awful situation? It's horrific, but they at least were... They had, like we say, noble intentions. When it comes to the gender-affirming care and the surgery and the mastectomies and the phalloplasties and all the rest of it, there is no benefit other than cosmetic.
No, that's what you're saying. They don't believe that.
No, they believe that you have to align the soul and the body.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you know that, is it 80% of these girls are autistic? I think that's about right.
It's a huge number, massively disproportionately represented.
Mirrors, it's socially contagious, like eating disorders and things like that. If you've got all of that information, I guess there is no WPATH files for the lobotomies. That's where it's not acceptable, isn't it? If you knew that early on, you should have paused, put on the brakes, because the majority of people, not everybody, but the majority, puberty solves the issue. So even if it was 51-49, you'd have, you know, but it's the other way.
It's the other way, it's the vast majority.
They don't think that. And if they don't think it, you can't stop the stupidity of the world. The world is stupid. It's filled with billions of stupid people. you know...
I know, but I wish those stupid people weren't in charge of hospitals.
Yeah, exactly, because you're like an elitist, Andrew, and you have a right to be because you're so smart and whatever.
I'm an elitist because I want experts to be good at their jobs.
There are lots of elitists who aren't smart enough who don't deserve it, but a lot of them mean well. Personally, I'm with you. I think it's horrible, but we can't outlaw everything because you trust the government, and the government is filled with normal people, and they're horrible.
Well, I suppose what we could do is just draw the line at kids, couldn't we? I mean, there is a debate to be had about, if you go to the doctor and say, I want a part of my body removed because in my head I'm something else, I don't actually think it's ethical for a doctor to go through with that. I mean, if I said to my doctor, I want my arm chopped off because I just feel like I shouldn't have had an arm, that sounds flippant, but there are people who have said precisely that. The doctor surely should be thinking what we need is some therapeutic treatment
well,
here.
And certainly not to ban the discussion.
Right, exactly.
That's the outrageous part. The fact that it's children and the fact that gender-affirming care means not having a sensible discussion about this.
So let me ask you, Cressida, do you think with Trump coming in now, we will get a blanket ban in the United States on gender-affirming care?
Maybe for children, not for everyone.
No, sure. That's a separate debate. But when it comes to... I mean, I think it's a no-brainer when it comes to children. But those kids who haven't fully developed, you know, they don't know their own minds, they don't know who they are, and I can't help but notice that a lot of the parents are pushing it.
I don't think Trump will do that.
You don't?
I don't think he can do that. That's a federal thing. It involves a personal harm on children. It's like the death penalty. There's no federal law you could say we are outlawing murder. That's a state crime. So
is that right?
Yes, as far as I know.
I mean, you know, not the most reliable source, are you?
I don't know myself.
But you think that, this might be a state-by-state thing. But
that's what Trump was trying to do with the whole Roe versus Wade thing.
But surely with this Supreme Court case, if it is the case that the Supreme Court says to the ACLU, no, you have no case, that does set a precedent in law.
But it's not a federal, quote-unquote, federal precedent. It's over everything.
Yeah.
But it's not like Donald Trump as the president doing that. So he can't be involved in this.
Well,
but he can appoint a judge who would agree with this.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean. So he can...
Yeah.
You end up with a situation where there are more people on the Supreme Court that are sceptical about this kind of thing.
Yeah, and right now there's a lot. I think it's 6-3.
Yes.
But there could be even more, and there won't be even much of a debate.
OK, well, look, we do have to move on, but it's a very interesting debate, and obviously we've spoken about it a lot on this show, and we will return to it. And next week we will hopefully have some more information about the US Supreme Court, and hopefully we'll be able to speak to our guest at that point. So next on Free Speech Nation, the spotlight is on the great British countryside in our cultural roundup with the show favourite, historian and broadcaster David Oldroyd-Bolt. So please don't go anywhere.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After an unsettled weekend, it is still going to be windy in the south, clearer skies overnight in the north before higher pressure builds into the new week. So we still do have a squeeze in the isobars, indicating some strong and gusty winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but higher pressure towards the north. So a cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through Monday, with brisk winds still, especially along the south coast, with some showers most frequent in the southeast. Drier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but it will be a cold start to the day with a touch of frost in places. But that does mean a bright start across much of Scotland, with plenty of winter sunshine to start the day, perhaps even with some freezing fog patches around that may be slow to lift. Across Northern Ireland, plenty of blue sky once again, but there will be a touch of frost too, so cold start out there. Some glimmers of sunshine, especially across western areas of England and Wales, but often quite cloudy as we go through the afternoon. So there is going to be a lot of cloud around and some outbreaks of rain, especially across the south and east and across the English Channel too. But there will be some breaks in the cloud, the best of the sunshine once again across Northern Ireland and Scotland. It will be cold here though, with temperatures struggling here at around 5 or 6 degrees, but across the south holding up at around 8 or 9 degrees. So it's going to be another cold start across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we start Tuesday morning morning with a widespread frost. A lot of cloud across much of England and Wales. Again, thick enough just for some patchy rain and drizzle at times, but for most of us it's largely dry, and as we go through the week, higher pressure remains, but it'll be still largely cloudy with some overnight frost and fog. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle, where we've got our usual arts and culture roundup with the historian and broadcaster David Aldroyd Bolt. Welcome to the show. David, you're always keeping abreast of what's going on. What's the first thing you wanted to talk about tonight?
London has a new concert hall, the first one for a very long time indeed. Regular viewers will know that I often go to the Wigmore Hall on Wigmore Street, just north of Oxford Street, for concerts. Well, Wigmore Hall was originally called the Bechstein Hall because Bechstein Pianos founded it. And then in 1916, during the First World War, when all things German were understandably out of vogue, the building was requisitioned, sold to Debenhams, and that was it for Bechstein. Well, Bechstein Pianos decided 4 years ago that they wanted to come back to the heart of where they started. So in the classical music equivalent of parking their tanks on the lawn, so I suppose rolling the pianos into the drawing room, they bought a building a little farther up Wigmore Street, and they opened this 3 weeks ago. It is called the Bechstein Hall. And I think it's one of the most exciting developments in music in Britain for a long time.
Have you been able to see it yourself?
Yes, I went last night, thanks to the director, Terry Lewis, who anyone in the world of piano knows. He ran for many years Jack Samuel Pianos on Edgware Road. It is not only a superb concert hall, which has, I think, Britain's most advanced acoustical system. It's a £250,000 system that can replicate the acoustic of any hall in the world. It's also a first-class restaurant. And the novelty of this, or the USP, is that Terry has long thought that the standard starting time of concerts of 7:30 is stupid, because it means that you don't really have time to dine before, and London being what it is, you can't get in to dine anywhere after.
Exactly, I feel the same about the theatre.
It's exactly the problem. So Terry's decided, and also that programmes are too long, they are during the week going to have a 6:30 sitting for dinner, and then a 7:30 till 8:30 recital, and then an 8:30 sitting for dinner.
I thought you were going to say they would be serving food during the recital.
No, you choose whether you want to dine earlier or later, and then you have the hour in between. At the weekend, I went yesterday night, Saturday night, it's slightly different. You go in earlier, you have your first and second course, then you have the first half of the concert, an interval where you have your pudding, coffee, whatever, then back in for the second half, and then afterwards the bars open again.
That's a great idea. So it's a whole night out, effectively.
And the food was absolutely exquisite. I mean, this is a restaurant of top London quality. For, it must be said, not mad prices. Monday to Friday, it's £50 for 2 courses a head. Saturday, £60. And on a Sunday, they do what looks like an amazing Sunday lunch for £25, and then an hour-long concert.
And can you go to the recital without the food?
You can, yeah. You have to book the table if you want the food. You can otherwise just use the bar, which is really nice. It's an Art Deco-style bar with nods to the original Bechstein Hall in the decoration. They've also found some of the Minton tiles that were in the original building and exposed those, which are beautiful 19th century, early 20th century tiling. Everything has been done with the highest attention to detail. The seats in there, for instance, are made by the same people who make seats for Ferraris, and they're big, comfortable business class style seats, which I'm told come in at a mere 1,500 quid each.
Oh, well, OK, but that's a bargain. And what's the programming looking like there?
I think it's a really exciting approach to programming as well, because these are younger artists, There are some more well-established. So last night was the extremely well-known Australian pianist Piers Lane, who's been resident here 40 years playing Chopin nocturnes. But during the week, it tends to be up-and-coming pianists and violinists, guitarists and other chamber musicians. It's a small venue.
Yes.
It's not like the Wigmore where you can get a couple of hundred in. This is a small venue for sort of 50 people.
Yes.
But it's about changing the concert experience, and I really hope that that will be successful.
I mean, there's something that to be done, isn't there, about changing the culture and the attitude towards classical music generally, I suppose, and making it more accessible and popular, and there is that perception of its inherent elitism. You know, does this help to contribute towards a rectification of that?
Well, perhaps a shortening of the programme might, because if you're not sure about it, you've only got an hour rather than 45 minutes and then another 45 minutes. That said, the ticket prices are not that much cheaper. Between this venue and their new showroom in Manchester, they've invested £50 million. Okay. So, you know, there is a serious capital expenditure here, but then artists have to be paid.
Of course.
You know, these are people who spend their entire lives practicing for this, so they have to be paid a commensurate rate, which means that we have to shell out for proper price tickets, just as I'm sure anyone would agree is reasonable.
Yes, but the solution might be more government funding of these kind of things.
The solution might be if you're German, but we unfortunately don't have any money, so that's not yet possible.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. OK. And what else did you want to discuss this week?
Well, I want to discuss something that is coming up next. Now, GB News has done the very best job, I think, of any broadcaster, and I say that with impartiality, of covering the recent travails of our farmers and those in the countryside. You've given a great deal of time to this, so I want to give a bit more to this by highlighting an exhibition that's coming up on the 18th of this month, that's to say a week on Wednesday, of rural art and rural artists. This takes place at London Scottish House, which is in Westminster. It's the headquarters of the London Scottish Regiment, and this is going to be an exhibition put on by Touchpoint, a strategy and consulting group of contemporary rural artists with British wines available, which your viewers shouldn't shiver at. British wine is now getting better.
Yes, why is that? Someone told me it was related to climate change.
Yes, it's one of the great things that climate change can do for us, if only we harness it. For instance, Kent is now becoming like the region of Champagne. This is why British sparkling wine is excellent. Just avoid the reds, they're not so good.
OK.
But I think this is a really excellent idea to get into the heart of political London for one night only, an exhibition of the very best of rural art. It's also going to see the launch of Touchpoint's Rural Art Fund, which aims to raise money both to encourage new rural artists or those who are starting off, but also to put money back into the country. Because I think we'd all agree that those evocations of Britain with which we feel the strongest connection, which make us feel of England and Britain, that great romantic stirring, are the evocations of its countryside, whether it be the paintings of, say, Paul Nash or Constable or George Cole. These are things that make us feel a deep connection, and whether we live in the town or whether we live in the country. For me, anyway, these are the things that make England, and it's wonderful that there are artists still doing it when that style of life is under great threat. You know, people don't, I think, often realise the deep difficulty of rural life. It's not farmers in big Land Rovers going around shooting things and drinking lots. It's people working for far less than the minimum wage, often with the highest rates of mental illness in any sector across town or country, and for pretty thankless tasks,
Absolutely.
really. So anything that highlights that, anything that gets money towards it, and anything that helps British artists to prosper, I think, should be celebrated. And well done for this newish consultancy group for actually getting off its backside and doing something, doing it quickly, and really trying to highlight rural life.
And it seems to be pushing against a rather disturbing trend. I mean, the current Constable exhibition at the National Gallery was curated by someone who struck me as an activist, attempting to problematise images such as the Hay and suggest that these, didn't sufficiently address the evils of British colonialism.
Well, I think our segment on that must have done some good, because when I went to that exhibition a few weeks ago, it wasn't nearly so radical in its programming as it was made out to be beforehand.
Interesting.
Or it could just have been that the National Gallery was trying to get people to turn up by pretending that it was somehow woker than it was. That said, this is the problem, that many people working in the arts have no connection to rural life. They have no connection to the country. They go to university, they live in an entirely metropolitan arena for the entirety of their professional lives, and they don't know what goes on outside London or New York or Paris or Washington, D.C., for instance.
And do you think there's a sense in which there's a snobbishness about the arts within the countryside, the idea that this is a metropolitan?
Well, I suppose they would think that it's lots of old ladies daubing pointless watercolours, but as we can see, as you will see, and I really hope that the link is up on the screens now for viewers at home and that viewers in the studio will go find this, there is so much more to rural art. It's not just nice paintings of horses or sort of wishy-washy landscapes. There's a real vividity. It shows the reality of rural life, and it shows why this is the essence of England.
Well, there it is on the screen. Just just remind us what it's called and how people can find it?
This is the Rural Art Exhibition at London Scottish House on the 18th of December.
Fantastic. David Aldroyd-Bolt, thanks. Excellent as always. And next on Free Speech Nation, it'll be time for social sensations, and our expert panel will be answering your unfiltered dilemmas, so don't go anywhere.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
So maybe people are opting for the more traditional ways of meeting people. Meeting organically.
It's the only way to actually... Well, I know some people have
it's worked very well for some people. I mean, I personally think that doing things more organically is probably going to be better, or it's more to my taste. It has worked well for lots of people.
So I absolutely agree. There's a very interesting young woman, she's about 22, who writes on this and has a podcast called Freya India. And she talks about this dating industry, and she said all she ever wanted to do as a teenager was go down the pub and meet a man and fall in love. And the dating apps just don't do that. And she said they've become so, it's just literally people looking for sex. We need to get back to traditional ways of meeting face to face, but we also need to stop toxifying it. A man flirting with a woman is not toxic. Men and women have done this for years. Obviously, we need to know about boundaries, but we also need to allow men and women to do what comes naturally.
I think it's also about spontaneity in society. It's much harder to, just randomly go out in an evening in London and not know what you're doing and have a good time than it was, I think, 15 years ago or so. Yeah, and if you don't have spontaneity in your life in general terms, then that spontaneous meeting with someone is less likely.
I think it's also where you are, because I was just thinking, as you said, that London, going out to try and meet someone in London is one thing. If you live in a small town and you go down your local pub, there's you're more likely to meet someone that you get to know over a period of time.
But this is also why we need to support our pubs and our hospitality areas, because they are important social integrators. They really are. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So it's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what's been going viral this week on social media. First up, we got this video.
You please join me when I say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay! It worked. Nervous moment there.
I mean, there wasn't a Mexican wave of enthusiasm there, was there? Did anyone join in?
I don't think so. He barely joined in with himself. he wasn't on board.
It reminds me a bit of when Kamala Harris, when people were chanting her name, and she said, no, chant your own name, and no one did. And there was a horrible, embarrassing moment. It's a bit like that, isn't it?
Awful. It looks like a deep fake made by somebody who doesn't like it.
Do you feel a bit sorry for Keir Starmer? Because he's not a charismatic man, and that's something that's innate, right? We can't all be like you.
Yeah, I feel sorry. Is that I feel sorry because his wife. I know his wife's a Jewish woman.
Okay.
And she has higher expectations than this.
And she's married to the Prime Minister. She's doing pretty well.
Well, she's putting on a good face now. He's on the way out.
I don't know.
And there go the kids.
Look, he lit the tree successfully, so let's not mock him too much. Let's move on now to this video. It's just coming. It is Godwin's law writ large. Just any debate, it has to become about Hitler. Hitler has to be mentioned all the time. Look, this is such a bizarre thing. Like, you know, the spectre of fascism, a unique evil in the 20th century, comparing that to people who have legitimate concerns about the impact of illegal immigration on their lives and communities, those are poles apart. And it's kind of, I think it's kind of an insult for the people who died under fascist regimes.
That's a very good point, Andrew.
To make that comparison.
Yes, it is. And also, I'd love to know where that man lives. I bet it's Islington or... I think he lives in an unaffected area, would be my guess.
Well, apparently he writes for the New European.
Oh, I'll look him up.
Which is that anti-Brexit rag, which gave me a great review for my stand-up show, The Edinburgh Fringe. No, it did. It gave me a really good review. I was surprised. I didn't use it, obviously. So what do you think about that?
Well, it's... You know, it's people who think that they're better than us. It's the arrogant left. The left are arrogant. He thinks he's... This has... First of all, the Nazis had nothing to do with immigration, really. I mean, Germany wasn't an immigrant country at the time. It was like 99% German and a few Jews.
But does he really believe... I mean, look, the Nazis were about ethnic purity, this idea of an Aryan race. Does he really think that people who voted for Brexit wanted just a pure white race or something? This is absolute nonsense. OK, let's move on. Lewis has no answer, so let's get another video clip to save Lewis's embarrassment more than anything. OK, let's go. So why did that go viral, do you think, Cressida?
Andrew, how can you not find that entertaining?
Well, I think it's people doing karaoke, which is their want. I don't begrudge them that they're enjoying themselves.
Karaoke? I don't know the original of
Is there
egg sausage.
I think it's a child. It's a children's song.
Is it a children's song?
That you sing to your kids. There you go, like head, shoulders, knees and toes.
Ah, I see, I understand. But it's been given a patriotic twist. Is that what it is?
Of diabetes, yeah.
I don't think there's any harm in that song. Well, I wonder why that goes viral, though. I'm just curious as to why people are entertained by that.
Well, I think it's part of our agenda here at GB News, is the return to the way things used to be.
There we go.
Bad entertainment.
You realise that's going to get clipped by all the left-wing people who hate...
And saying, put my name on it, yeah.
Well, you know, he is a provocateur.
He certainly is.
Do you do karaoke?
Absolutely not.
Really? Why not?
No,
I can see you doing My Heart Will Go On.
Can you?
Yeah.
Can you?
I actually can.
We'll do it as a duet sometime. And...
Can we do a duet? I'd love to do that. Something like that.
Why
anyway.
not? Why not?
Yeah.
Don't put pressure on her.
I'm just saying, like, you know, I've got a lovely voice and I'm sure you have.
It's a shame we didn't do it when I had the boat, because then we could have done the DiCaprio thing at the front.
That would have been amazing, yes. For people who don't know, Cressida used to live on a boat, you see. And had we known, we could have reenacted Titanic.
Not the Titanic, a houseboat.
Well, we would have sunk the boat, but we would have done the bit where they sing. Doesn't Celine Dion grab Kate Winslet or something?
Something like that,
Anyway. OK, well, have we got any more videos, or are we going on to... No, just unfiltered dilemmas now. So this is the part of the show where you have written on with all your problems and you expect us to solve them. And it never happens. But let's find out if tonight is the first night. And this dilemma came in from Matt. Hello, Matt. Now, Matt says the following. Me and my girlfriend have been together for almost 3 years. At the beginning of the year, we had to separate as she got a job in a different country. She has been distant and cold towards me. She stopped texting and calling me. Recently, I've developed feelings for one of my co-workers, but I still love my girlfriend. What should I do? It sounds like, Matt, she's not interested.
Yeah.
I don't want to be brutal, but, you know, she's moved to a different country. She's not contacting you anymore. How many more hints do you need? I mean, is that unfair?
No, I think that's very accurate, Andrew.
Am I being brutal?
No, I think... Why does he still love her? What's that?
Well, no, actually, you know, I think if you treat people badly, there's a certain psychological response to that. Some people love that.
Right.
People, you know, it's that whole thing of treat them mean, keep them keen.
But
what more does she have to do? Like, kill his dog and, you know, like... there's got to be a point where he says, actually, I've got more self-respect.
Look, a bird in the hand, I know that's bad taste, but he's got somebody already.
He's got his eye on someone else.
Yes, so surely that will cure it. You know, the best way to get over somebody.
Do you know what it is, Matt? I think she's just a habit. I think, like, you've got it in your head, you're just used to it, and you don't think that there can be anything better. But she sounds awful, and I think you've got to get rid of her immediately. What do you think, Lewis?
I love you.
Well, I'm glad you've chosen this moment to express that.
No, it's true. This reminds me of that song, the Velvet Underground song.
Which one?
It's one of the nerds.
Femme Fatale.
No, there was a song about him sending himself his girlfriend didn't get back to him that quickly.
Oh, really?
And his girlfriend's at uni in Minnesota or something, and he sends himself in a box, and she...
Sounds
like she doesn't want to hear from him.
Long-distance relationships, they're tough, aren't they? So, you know, end it. Anyway, let's get on for...
They're a lot easier than actually living with someone.
Well, there is that. There is that. OK. Well, so try the new girl. Anyway, so second dilemma from Sarah. Sarah says, my old roommate convinced me to pay her phone bill as she couldn't afford it. The bill was £50. A few months went by and I've now asked her for my money back as she's been going out quite a lot and buying new stuff. She refused to pay me back. What should I do? You know, I can't stand that. Is if you lend money to people, that's all very well, but when they start spending money on other things rather than prioritising your debt, it's just a slap in the face. I think those people are evil. Don't you think that this should... Another one, you just sever all ties, right?
I love you, Andrew.
Yeah, you keep saying it, but I think this is a hollow declaration.
Yeah.
I don't believe it for a second.
It doesn't sound like enough money that you should go to court over, so you just have to let it go.
It is just 50 quid.
Yeah.
You owe me 20 quid, don't you? Yeah. Anyway, let's not settle that now.
He owes you a whole career.
Yeah, well, there is that as well. What should she do? I mean, I just think that the spending... Or why not have an open conversation? Just say, look, I'm concerned that you owe me money and you're spending money frivolously. Why don't we have a discussion about that?
The words would stick in my throat. As
Really?
always with these things, my answer is be passive-aggressive. I hope that they notice.
Yeah, very good idea. Great advice from Cressida. Well, look, that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. But thanks so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when Congress revealed that COVID probably did come from a lab. Politics is finally taken out of therapy, and apparently calling people racist makes them more racist. So thanks to my panel, Lewis Schaefer and Cressida Wetton. Thanks to all of my brilliant guests this evening. And by the way, if you want to join us live in the studio, come along to the GB News studio, be part of this wonderful audience. All you have to do is go to sroaudiences.com. That website address is on the screen right now. You just apply there. You can come along. We've got food, we've got drink, we've got excellent company. I can't guarantee that Lewis will be here every week, but he's here most weeks, even if he's not on the TV. He just hangs around the place. It's really weird. Anyway, stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's coming up in just one moment. And please don't forget that Headliners is on every night at 11 o'clock. That is the late night paper preview show where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. Thanks for watching Free Speech Nation. I'll see you next week.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After an unsettled weekend, it is still going to be windy in the south, clearer skies overnight in the north before higher pressure builds into the new week. So we still do have a squeeze in the isobars, indicating some strong and gusty winds for the rest of today and into tomorrow, but higher pressure towards the north. So a cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through Monday, with brisk winds still, especially along the south coast, with some showers most frequent in the southeast. Drier across Northern Ireland and Scotland, but it will be a cold start to the day with a touch of frost in places. But that does mean a bright start across much of Scotland, with plenty of winter sunshine to start the day, perhaps even with some freezing fog patches around that may be slow to lift. Across Northern Ireland, plenty of blue sky once again, but there will be a touch of frost too, so cold start out there. Some glimmers of sunshine, especially across western areas of England and Wales, but often quite cloudy as we go through the afternoon. So there is going to be a lot of cloud around and some outbreaks of rain, especially across the south and east and across the English Channel too. But there will be some breaks in the cloud. The best of the sunshine once again across Northern Ireland and Scotland. It will be cold here though, with temperatures struggling here at around 5 or 6 degrees, but across the south holding up at around 8 or 9 degrees. So it's going to be another cold start across Northern Ireland and Scotland as we start Tuesday morning with a widespread frost. A lot of cloud across much of England and Wales. Again, thick enough just for some patchy rain and drizzle at times, but for most of us it's largely dry, and as we go through the week, higher pressure remains, but it'll be still largely cloudy with some overnight frost and fog. Bye-bye.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed boiler repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, how are you? It is 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the whole world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In the big opinion